For those of you who aren't familiar, Chris and I have been friends for many years, and we talk several times a week on the phone in the mornings, just catching up, and we have a lot of random conversations. And we decided one day that this might be a really good thing to start to record some of these on purpose. So we've only done a couple, and this was the first time we tried to do this remotely. And so forgive us, there's a few glitches in here. We'd like to do a little bit more in the future, and we're going to try and figure out a more efficient way to achieve this. But for now, hopefully you enjoy the conversation, and forgive us for our few little failings at the moment. All right, well, Chris and I are back, and it's been a long time, and we thought we would start back up by talking about what it's like as a creative to find inspiration when there's just none there.
When you're fresh out.
Oh, yeah. And man, not that I want to have to be the guy that's like, the last 2 years have been weird for finding inspiration, but let me tell you about how the last 2 years have been weird for finding inspiration.
Yeah, that's true. I don't remember actually how we got on the subject when we were talking on the phone the other day, so I'm kind of coming back to it fresh. I hope that's a good thing, but yeah, I don't remember exactly how we got onto it.
Man, I don't remember either, but it's, I think I've been working on a couple of projects for new clients that I'm really excited about, like I was telling you about the Hell's Gate one, and I got to dive into a bunch of new suspension designs. So I was telling you that, like, I'm just trying to close down a few things from the end of 2021 and rolling into 2022, and just finding the inspiration to dive into these things can be, the new project can be a little bit rough, and probably kind of launched from there. No matter how exciting, like, I'm excited. The project's great. I'm so excited that I finally get to do this thing that I've been gearing up to do this whole time. And, but yet, like, the fire is just hard to get lit.
I can definitely relate to that. Every day seems like a test to see if you're going to find the energy to do either the things that you set out to do that day, or the new things that you agreed to, or the things that you thought you would do. Yeah, it's all just kind of a mixing pot of how is this all going to pan out, especially in moments of feedback where, like, am I actually checking the boxes? Am I doing the right things that the person that I'm doing the work for, are they asking for me? And trying to get, I guess maybe where we got onto it was finding the motivation sometimes for the tasks that aren't so exciting, or drumming up the excitement to do the things to get started, because kind of getting started on stuff is kind of difficult. And lately it feels like so much going on, so many different tasks, new jobs, old jobs, everything's just kind of melting over together, and you're sort of lost somewhere in the middle trying to find out, like, even if something that you want to tackle on your own, how do I get there? How do I just find that free headspace to just be clear and do that thing? And it seems to be a little extra challenging lately. I don't know if it's because too much coffee, not enough coffee. I haven't found the exact balance to that yet.
There is no constant ratio of coffee that is correct. So
no, it's different on the day-to-day. I can certainly appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, I think the difficulty in some cases can be the fact that you and I aren't clocking in and don't have, like, a preset. I use just, like, working at Target as an example. You show up to Target and you just kind of have a job, and it doesn't matter if you get a lot of that job done that day or not. You still get to collect your 8 hours.
Yeah.
The day just kind of, like, drums by, and you can, at a job like Target, you can just mull around, and as long as you look busy and, what do they call that when you face all of the items in at a grocery store or a place like Target where all the items have to be on their face. There's a term for that, but you can just walk around the store all day and just make sure your department looks decent, and you can earn your paycheck just like that. Well, you and I can't really do that. We can only wash our dishes or clean our workspace a few times before. Well, that's just not a financially sustainable process. So.
Well, there's nothing left to do. You've become so good at procrastinating that you do amazing things in the process of procrastinating. And you get a lot accomplished by putting off things that you need to do. I think now that you said that, I think I have a slightly better recollection of where we're coming from on that, because we are not people that are necessarily on a schedule. Of course, people that we work with have to be somewhat schedule oriented, so we have to try to conform to deadlines and things that are trying to be achieved within those times. But because you and I aren't specifically on clock in, clock out type thing, like you said. The idea that you're going to wake up and start your day with inspiration is sort of misleading as a creative in any endeavor. Like, you're just going to wake up and, yeah, it's there. I got the job, so I'm just going to jump right into it because it's the thing. But not every day has that enthusiasm or energy behind it. That doesn't mean that the tasks don't need to be done. And people aren't still expecting something from you that day or as part of that project. But it's really just physically not there all the time. A lot of times, actually, you just don't have it. And you have to find it, drum it up, or find a way. Something that I do sometimes is just try to find a way to sort of throw a wrench in the process for myself, like a new challenge, which will help bring some enthusiasm and some life into the process, switching mediums, or I'm going to do this one from scratch, because you have to kind of give yourself, your brain, something to give you a little bit of exercise and practice to bring you into the process a little bit, because otherwise it's just kind of, some of the stuff feels like a little bit of the same old after you've done it 1,000 times. So how you sort of synthesize that inspiration or the want to get into creative, that can be very challenging from day to day, especially if the day before was a little bit heavy.
Yeah, now that you bring that up, I think that is what happened, because I have got the 2 commission paintings that I'm supposed to do, and they're nearly 9-month-old commissions at this point. And just, we've talked about the last 6 months of 2021 was very, very labor heavy for me to try and get some stuff in the shop taken care of, and there just plain wasn't room to do the artwork. And of course, the people who commission me are very patient, and I'm thankful for that. But that doesn't change the fact that, okay, now I got a little bit of headspace and some time in my life where it's time to look at potentially doing those commissions. And now it's like, well, okay, where do I find the inspiration?
Yeah.
'Cause you and I have talked about it, and it's not like these jobs were big paying jobs, but a lot of times that moment of like, hey, here's some American dollars, I would like you to do the thing. You're like, yeah, I like American dollars.
Oh, yeah.
And unfortunately, they were paid for 9 months ago, so now they're being done for free as far as my brain is concerned.
Yeah, you're right. There's really no profit in it once that amount of time's gone by. And I've got projects like that as well. And I think plenty of creative people are sort of guilty of letting some things straggle behind while you try to catch up in life. There's all this stuff in the mix that is really hard to vocalize, or you really don't see on social media or Instagram anyways. There's so many things that have to align in the background in order for just normal work to occur, especially if you're not a normal, regular employee somewhere, which I don't think would be a benefit in our scenario anyways. Having a regular anything isn't going to necessarily help you create better. You may do things more consistently, but I think the quality would decline. Just personality types just don't fit that box. We talked about before how the best moment for those types of jobs, whether high paying or low paying, it actually almost doesn't matter, is almost like right after you get contacted about it, or somebody is willing to put money down, deposit on it, because that's really when the moment of enthusiasm is there, because it's a new task right then. So for me, unless I pretty much jump right into it, it just kind of falls into the wheelhouse of normal work, which is not a bad thing, but there's some stuff that really just needs to be met with enthusiasm early on, because a year later, it's hard to recreate that enthusiasm again, just in order to get started on something that might have been an awesome project a year ago, but right now is like, how am I going to fit this into right now me? It's more, at some point, more about getting it done than really the creative process. Then you have to start being really creative about how you get it done or how you get started.
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of what you and I do crosses over, and that, while it might look like on the outside that we're doing the same thing consistently, the subtleties about what we do are changing consistently. One day I might be, building custom one-off parts to make a 56 Cadillac look like it was bagged from the factory, and then the very next day I'm designing a rear suspension for, the Tacoma pickup or something like that, and on the outside looking in, it might look like, oh, he's just doing suspension design stuff. Oh, it's totally different brain space, completely different brain space. I might as well be sculpting a sculpture one day and laying bricks the next day. they're so far separated from each other because the design phase and the fabrication phase are two different brain spaces altogether. So, if I'm in the mode of designing a suspension or doing a bunch of designs at one point, like Andy's going to have me doing at Hell's Gate, doing a bunch of suspension designs, and then I've got to break away from my brain going, okay, suspension design, computer design, and engineering and stuff, and then break away from that and go out to the shop and put in a few hours just doing fabrication work. It's a really, really harsh break between the type of work and what the brain space is, and the brain doesn't know how to shift so hard. It's like when I was writing the book, I couldn't write for a few hours in the morning and then head out to the shop in the afternoon. This just doesn't work. I don't know if you can do that, but man, I can't shift gears like that.
No, it's pretty optimistic, so I can certainly relate. I think folks that have given me feedback on, hey, maybe if you do this one day and then you do design stuff one day and then switch gears to painting the next day, or do one in the morning and then one in the afternoon. They're such different things that it's not impossible to switch gears, but you're just going to kind of be in the mode of one or the other, so you're going to one's going to have a little bit more of a feel of the versus the other. So they just need a different type of attention. So if they're happening in the same day, they're really not kind of getting the direct attention that I think that they need. So it's kind of good to have them separate. But going through that stuff like a light switch where it's off, on, off, on, off, on, isn't really fulfilling either. It's just, you're just kind of jumping around and inevitably looking forward to the day when you're doing the one thing, or not looking forward to the day where you're doing the other. And that's when it's that sort of predictable, where you're going to be working on something you don't want to do one day. Well, you won't spend any time looking forward to it, and you'll certainly try to figure out ways to get out of it or not do it, or procrastinate with something else.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, I think it's a good thing to point out that for creatives, if you are somebody that can produce something and then the rest of your day is wiped out, or shifting gears or whatever that might be, I use the gym analogy, because you're not going to go to the gym and work your arms and your legs in the same day. I mean, maybe you are, but if you're doing deliberately working out, you're going to be like, well, today's leg day, tomorrow's upper chest, so you're not going to wander around. So it's hard to shift gears like that and really focus in. So point being, once you get in the mode, you're really digging in and you're doing some meaningful work. And then if you can't dig in because you have to switch gears later on in the day, then you can't get deep and meaningful and do the super creative thing. You could do that surface level as I'm jumping back and forth and I'm doing general fabrication. I can fit a tube and then I can cut a piece of material out and then I can make a quick pattern. I can do that. But when I'm doing like the 56 Cadillac as an example again, where I'm having to do a lot of parts shaping, and it's literally like sculpting just with steel in order to make these parts look like they were factory parts. Going from that headspace to, fitting a tube into a roll cage is, oh man, I'd rather just finish up that arm for the day and wake up the next morning and go, okay, today I'm not doing art things. I'm fitting tubing into a roll cage. And I want to, just kind of point of all of that is, if you're doing something that takes that sort of intense attention, it's not a bad thing to have to go, well, I can't shift into this other mode. Now it's time for, in your case, to go take a drive and go find some coffee, or in my case, to go ride a motorcycle around the yard or something.
Yeah. It is possible to take that kind of break in the middle of the day and split the day up. Yeah. It would still be difficult to switch gears really hard and go into another thing. But I've found that, to say, all right, I'm going to do design work one day, and I guess this painting that I'm going to start on the next day. Just having that space in between to go to sleep, wake up, and start fresh. It's only a day. It's really doesn't put you behind, especially if it yields you a better result anyways.
Yeah. Again, separating creatives from the old 9 to 5, it's almost necessary to have that break and start the next day kind of fresh. Or even I've read articles, studies, I guess, where it's not uncommon for an artist, for myself, I don't know about you, maybe that you felt like this when you had that big job middle of last year, where hitting a job really, really hard, getting this thing cranked out, and then thinking that you're going to take 2 or 3 days off to take a break and then get starting again just a couple days later working on something else. That is just not there for me. If I push a project that's mentally intensive, like creatively intensive, like the Merc, doing the body work on the Merc or something where it takes a lot of brain space to pay attention to all the spatial relationships and whatnot while I'm doing all the body work, and then to think that I'm just going to pick up again in a few days and be ready to start a new project. That is just not possible for me. I need months off to just recuperate mentally from doing this one intense thing for weeks and weeks and weeks at a time. And in the case of the Merc was months at a time. I need I think I took 1 month off and I still wasn't ready to get back into normal work. I just kind of picked up the pace and went, okay, well, let's just start doing the average job again. I'm not going to take on anything intense. Like there isn't only enough brain space inside of me for one intense job a year.
That makes sense.
I can't do it. I need a long break in between big jobs.
Well, if you think of yourself as kind of like a battery, and you're going through all the energy to complete something, you do need to recharge. Even though we're sort of batteries in that way.
Yeah.
But I've tried to come off of big jobs and just been optimistic about the ability to just taper back into work or taper back into life. And it is just an optimistic thing. You can sort of do some really, really basic stuff. My job doesn't tend to be real labor intensive, but it is very thought heavy. And without the ability to process things, it wouldn't matter how good I'm drawing. I'm just drawing bad ideas. So yeah, you need that space to recover. And when you're, in the case of what we're talking about, and you're doing a lot of jobs back to back to back, you really don't have much time in between anything to get that kind of recovery. So some of these side tasks or things that you can small projects you can procrastinate with a little bit will kind of get that cathartic attention because you need to do something sort of brain vacation-y, and it can still be sort of work-related in a way. There's probably some guilt paired with it too, because you're thinking about the things that you could have been giving this attention to, but you literally just can't. It just doesn't really make sense to explain sometimes. Sometimes you're just like, I just don't have it. The idea is not coming through. I'm trying. I'm physically awake, and I've got the paper and the pen, and I'm trying to do the things, but it's just not clicking.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I've definitely lately, because I had to push so hard the last, half of 2021, sitting down in front of the computer and going, okay, well, I have to start drawing this tab. I've had my own personal back half that I'm trying to develop is done except for one bracket for 2 weeks. And it was just like I pushed too hard to get to that point. And one bracket, huh? And sit down in front of it. I'll pull the file up and I'll go, where to start? Well, it's already mostly drawn. I just need to detail it out so I can get it over to my 3D guy. I just stare at it on the computer and go, oh, well, I bet I could wash my dishes one more time.
You know what I've been meaning to do? Yeah, exactly.
Let's vacuum my cat.
Yeah. It is really impressive, the things that you find to do in between the other things that aren't necessary or, not nearly as critical, but somehow you find the inspiration, the motivation to wash dishes or, rearrange something, put away all the tools that have been out, rearrange all your markers by color. I've been meaning to do this and I hadn't really wanted to procrastinate for a while. And now that I'm here and I don't want to do that, it's kind of a blessing because you still get to do something productive. You just don't have something you don't have something invoiceable at the end of those tasks.
Yeah, kind of circling around too. It's not really a sustainable business model.
No, it's a good break, but you're still kind of in it and you're still kind of thinking about stuff.
Yeah, and I should probably vocalize that talking about washing my dishes because I work at home and my office is in my house, so quite often washing dishes is something that I have to do. But it's nice to get it cleaned up for sure, and that is a sustainable business model, but not when you spend weeks scrubbing the corners of whatever the thing is that you think you're doing. You get super tied up in that thing because it's rewarding. Of course, dopamine is a reality, but it's doesn't pay the bills really. And that's kind of the cycle. It's probably one of the subjects we talked about was that I had that suspension so close and it's just right there in that final bracket.
Yeah.
final mount, and that even that mount is 60% there. I just need to finish those last little bits, and the client hit me up the other day. They're like, "Hey, do you think we could make it for this show?" That sounds like a really good inspiration to get this thing done. Yes, let's shoot for that show. And I normally make it a rule to say, no, I don't do that. But this seems like a really good opportunity to shoot to have a card done. Let's take that fire lighting and add it to the mix, because that works too.
Sometimes deadlines can add a lot of motivation.
Yeah, even though
that kind of snaps you into focus a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, I work great under a deadline. I don't like it, but I'm incredibly productive under a deadline. So I probably work better under a deadline than I do knowing that I'm getting an enormous paycheck in the end of something, to be perfectly honest.
That's kind of funny.
Are you the opposite or the same?
No, I can appreciate both sides of that. I'm no longer like being called the night before to do things. That's not super fun anymore. Yeah, I don't know. I guess at this point, the paycheck can certainly be a little bit more motivating, especially what we talked about before. The scale of the projects that we do aren't comparable.
Course, yeah.
So a big project for me wouldn't be the type of undertaking that happens in a real shop. So a little bit of a different wear there on the things for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. We talk about the disconnect between that quite a bit. Is so let's just say, for example, what's the average length of a job for you, for a client? You start a job and you finish a job. What's the average length of that?
So kind of an average start to finish for me on a run-of-the-mill thing might be 12 hours total. And that's not like sitting down and working 12 hours straight, not normally. It's just, figure 4 segments of 4 hours or something like that.
Does that include phone calls?
No, actually. No. Which, sometimes there's a bit of all those segments are split up by like feedback times, emails, phone calls, as you say. So not a hatefully large amount of time, but let's say a total of 12-hour project can easily get spread out to a month due to feedback speed or hearing back from a customer, or and certainly things on my end as well. If I'm doing a segment that requires 4 hours and I've only managed to put 2 in, but it takes me another week to find that next 2 to finish the work to get to review. So there's a million different reasons. It's not on the people that I work with. Sometimes I'm just as responsible for those things. So 12 hours can be split out into a month pretty easily on a single task, which sounds silly, but it's real life.
Jobs can certainly end up taking a 12-hour job can turn into months depending on what you're doing. And I could say the same thing about, these commissions that'll end up taking me, 6 to 8 hours a piece. Ended up we're at 9 months now. But yeah, I mean, by contrast, a small job for me, the average small job would be a month long of actual labor the whole time, billable. And then, of course, there's the little projects that show up. I did one, of course, over the weekend for a buddy who was an hour in front of a lathe or something, but that's certainly not the average, because I have jobs that also take years. So the average kind of falls into a month, maybe 2 months, depending on the thing. And but
sense.
even a short, big project that I just buckle down and crank on and bill really hard because I got a lot of hours in and have to take time off because I push so hard, would be like a 2-week job. So yeah, it's definitely a little bit different about how you manage energy and inspiration when you're doing something like that. And those sorts of short explosive jobs, I always let the client know, like, we'll hit this, we'll get this turned around for you. It's going to be expensive because you're just going to pay for a whole bunch of hours to just get cranked out, but we're going to turn this thing around really quick. And it looks really, really cool on paper. The problem is you need a week of recovery time afterwards because you push so damn hard for 2 weeks straight.
Which you can't bill for. You're not turning any profit.
So you got to add that into the mix, and then you end up actually profiting less than you thought you did because you end up having to take all of this time off.
Right. It's hard to factor in recovery
time.
time.
And then we circle around to, how do we find inspiration to start back up again? Because it's not like when you're cranked. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you do take a rest or a weekend or whatever, I don't think you ever really wake up one day and go, I'm ready to step back in. There's that moment is there's no choice there. You have to.
Yeah.
There's no arriving at the right time to get started. So it's like this ambiguous amount of time that you need rest or to stop working. And usually that rest period is dictated by something else anyway, some other job that needs to be started by a certain date or something else that needs to be finished. So there's never this full sense of rest. So I just don't think there's this arrival at I have finally rested enough. You could look back at a week off or a weekend and say, well, I did sleep, I did take time off. I don't really feel any different. Which is sort of a bummer sometimes, but the reality is the work is still there waiting for you. So you do need to just say, allude to what we're talking about. Find the inspiration to kind of go, well, I got to peel myself out of vacation mode because this doesn't feel like a vacation at all. So, and things are waiting for me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say is just because, I did that physically, intense job over a couple weeks to get something done, that doesn't mean the next week of resting means I'm sitting in front of the computer. It takes brain space, and you and I've talked about it. The brain uses more energy than any other muscle in your body or any other organ in your body. So sitting in front of a computer is just wiping you out too, and that's not rest. It's physical rest. My biceps aren't sad, my back's not sad, but now my brain is sad.
Yeah.
And if you're doing something intense enough out in the shop, there's enough brain power that's getting used up for that too. So it's not necessarily it's not like you can bounce back and forth between a physically laborious job and then a mentally laborious job, because there's just no rest in there.
No, it does take some time to switch gears a little bit. And like I said, even if it's just that one, just going to sleep and waking up the next day is enough. You just come back fresh, start in a different gear than what you went to sleep on. You usually can rest better that way anyways, knowing that you're unplugging from one and plugging into a new one, rather than trying to cross so many railroad tracks all at once. Because or at least in my experience, the end result is everything kind of gets less love than it should because you're trying to accomplish too much in such a short window.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you bring up a good point there. Is when you get to the point of charging what you and I are charging because we're specialists in our field and we can achieve an A to Z goal in a really efficient way, you can't continue billing the same way if you're wiped out because you're not producing.
Yeah, it's unfair.
You're not producing properly.
Yeah.
Like cycling all the way around to the Target employee, you could show up completely hungover or useless and just wander around Target and look busy and still get a paycheck, but the paychecks are befitting of that, of course, but you can't do what we're doing and bill the client because you're wiped out and producing subpar work. There's work that can get done. There's like fundamentals that we can get in place and go, okay, well, X, Y, and Z's in place, and then when I come in, I'll fill in all the gaps when I got the energies there. But there's not a lot of productivity that can happen when you're super wiped out like that.
Yeah, you're right. There's a little piddly stuff. You can kind of move the needle a little bit, but it's unjust to charge the same way when you're in that mode. And at that point, it is better to unplug a little bit or switch gears, grab another task, just so that you can come back to that one fresh anyway. So, the overall theme being, figure out a way to stop doing what you're doing and do something else, just so that you're not stuck on that treadmill of, I got to figure out how to get inspired for this. I mean, you do have to come to that in some way or another, but sometimes it just does feel like running on a treadmill. And eventually, you're just like, the things, what I'm putting out is not good. Yeah. Now I'm just burning time. I could be doing something else. I could have been at the beach this whole time, actually decluttering my brain. Yeah. Instead, I wasted here trying to make progress on something that is going to fight me. Not because it's a bad project and I'm not into it. I'm not ready for it. I'm just not, and I say ready, not like, you got to wait until you're ready to get into the project. That's a different kind of problem. Literally, go to sleep, wake up the next day. It's a day later. How bad can it be? Most people, if you're in constant communication with, are fine as long as you're honest about where you're at and how things are going. Most people are very human, just like us, and they're just happy to have an update versus just kicking the ball down the field.
Yeah. Well, it's. I think that just comes down to a lot of honesty at that stage.
Yeah. That comes with just experience and just being a little more grown up and adult. I certainly made plenty of those type of communication errors early on, just to figure that everybody would be patient and it's all good. But we don't live in that world, so
Well,
so it's just better to kind of let everybody know where you're at, even if it's not good news, just some news. Just let them know.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, somebody's paying you to do the thing, and even if it's not, let's be honest, most of what you and I do is pretty much not necessary for life. We're not putting food on people's plates or tables, and so we when somebody says, "Hey, I would like to pay you to do this thing that I'm excited about, and I want you to be a part of that," and you're not producing, then what are they paying you for? Because they're kind of paying us to provide them with like some spice in life, sort of, if I could just make it super simple. And so if they're like, "We gave you money so that you can return us something exciting in life," and you're not doing that, then it starts to feel, even if the end result is you give them the thing that they wanted, if it's not being produced in a time that they think it should be produced, then it starts to feel like, diminishing returns for them. Like, what am I paying for if the spice isn't being delivered?
And your expectations are mismatched. And it can be hard to come back as the hero in that situation because you've already slightly under-delivered in one part of the process by not getting there in a timely way. Believe me, I made this mistake plenty of times. I'm still always trying to figure out how to be better about timing and scheduling. But it circles back to the original issue we're talking about, finding the creative space. Just because somebody is an artist, whatever kind of artist that is, for a living, doesn't mean they just wake up and it's all happening. Kind of like, we've all met somewhat professional comedians. They're not always like super funny in every single moment of their life because that's, it's the role that they play. It is their profession. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're on 100% of the time. And let's be realistic, people that are on 100% of the time aren't really the greatest to be around. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, a little obnoxious to say the least.
So it comes with a little bit of tact, a little bit of experience. It doesn't mean that you figure out how to turn on and off in a creative endeavor. It's certainly better to just flat out not agree to stuff that you're not gonna find any enthusiasm for at all. So that definitely helps. Just pick better jobs to agree to.
Yeah,
but
not everybody
has. Pick us. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, sometimes you get into one you didn't realize it was going to be like that. But I was going to point out that not everybody has the option of turning down a job because it's just not fun. Not everybody has enough work to say, "No, thank you." I don't remember exactly when that happened. It was a few years ago where I could say, "That just doesn't sound like fun, so I don't think I want to do that." And I've had a couple people make snarky comment about that online, like, "Oh, what, you don't like money?" It's like, well, there's not there. You and I both talked about there are some instances where there's no amount of money that makes the job something worth going and doing. It's like, we both have been offered just turnkey 9-to-5 commuter type jobs, and I don't know what that dollar figure is that would make me want to do that, but I would be pretty much done in 3 months, even if the dollar figure, even if it was $1 million a month, at 3 months of getting up and having to drive to work every single day and commuting the average, because we both work from home, so we know the stark difference of having to do that. I'm not poking fun at anybody, but there are just some jobs where you go, "No, I can't do that." There's just not enough money to make that worth it in my life, and no, thank you. I'm not your guy, and you're not my client, and that is okay. Would be the other, would be my position on that as well. Is it's okay to not be the right match.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this, when you're kind of a freelance creative in this weird way, to me, essentially, people are buying your time and your freedom. So whether it's an art piece or a sit-down job that somebody wants you to be present for all the time. If you're agreeing to do a job that really doesn't speak to you or doesn't really connect with you in a meaningful, soulful way, you're really just taking effort away from something you would actually like to do, or somebody else who's really interested in having your time, or something like that. So to agree to those things is a trap. It can seem helpful, especially if there's money tied to it. You kind of go, all right, there's some security, but it doesn't matter how great a 9-to-5 job is. Somebody can fire you at any point. That's reality. Like, It's just not on your terms at that point. It's on theirs. So I'd rather have the stress on my side of trying to figure it out than, when's this person going to find someone to replace me that can do it cheaper and better or whatever.
Yeah.
But I like my freedom a lot, so I prefer to work this way. But it does come with managing a lot of, finding the inspiration, getting into something, because even though, we both take on jobs that are really exciting, that are fulfilling to us, they speak to us, but it's also a sliding scale. They can be 1 to 10 all the time. It doesn't mean that they're all 10s, so finding the inspiration and the motivation to get started on those different numbers on the scale is different. And they're different days. So there's not like this formula that you can come up with. You sit down and you go, all right, I'm gonna get into this process for blah, blah, blah. As much as we joke about, millionaires and how they wake up at 4 a.m. and they ride their horse and then they go to the gym and then they have their...
It's the only way.
It's, yeah. You're just a hater if you don't do those things.
Yeah.
But those people are just bigger 9-to-5s, as far as I can tell. You're just doing it bigger. And I'm happy for you, but that's just not who I am. There's a reason that I like the freedom. And hopefully the work that I yield has a bit to do with that, but to be stuck in a bubble of producing within a time can do good things. But again, circling back to when you're trying to find the inspiration and motivation for the job that you're trying to get into, how you cue that up really just comes from experience. It's not impossible, but know that you're also not going to win every single time.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say is this could sound very braggadocious to somebody on the outside, like us, like, oh, you can't buy my freedom and all of that stuff. Like we both put in a lot of hard years. There's a lot of risk that comes with this. A lot of effort.
And we've worked for people before.
Yeah, exactly. We've worked there. We know what it's like. And, the risk is, for the last 6 months of last year, I didn't get any days off because I had 7 days off in the last 6 months of 2021 because I had so much work to do. I couldn't even take Christmas or Thanksgiving off. I had to work. I declined going anywhere because I had way too much stuff to do. So talking about, I got to buy my freedom. Well, the other side of that is, I get to make my own hours, but it just so happens I didn't have any options in that circumstance. So, and that's that's the risk that comes with this. And obviously it's not something I would have done, but it happened like on purpose. I wouldn't have chosen that. It happens. So it's not for everybody, I think, is more of the underlying thing there is.
There's a personality type for it for sure.
Yeah. And, talking to different people, they're like, I don't know if I could do that. Yeah, well, it's not for everybody, man. This is
certainly days I'm not sure it's for me. Sometimes I'm just like, did I do this right? Am I doing okay? And it is. You got to check in with yourself every once in a while. But you're right. Yeah. It's not just like there's probably a lot of comfort and security in a really steady paycheck and a 9-to-5 job that I don't feel like that will work for me. I can understand why being a freelance person, the same type of like trying to understand that mindset from the other side. I can see why it seems very bizarre and dysfunctional. And in a lot of ways it is, but I like that part of it.
Yeah. Well, you and I have talked about our personality types are such where if we did the same thing over and over, it just would become mind-numbing, and we can't do that, and we naturally rebel and quit or burn the place down or whatever the thing is. We can't do the same thing over and over. Our personality type is we can't do that. So we're constantly looking for something, circling around to something to inspire us, because most of the jobs are like, well, man, I just don't have the inspiration to do this. It's because maybe it feels like wash, rinse, repeat, or maybe life was just so busy lately that we're wiped out, or whatever the thing is. But you and I, our personality type is definitely we can't do that. I mean, you go to a different coffee shop as often as possible.
As often as possible.
You do not have, you might have a favorite, but you probably only hit your favorite once a week.
I have like a favorite in every city, town, and corner. And I'll hit a different one every other day because, if something's really, really good, then it'll become just kind of normal if you do it all the time.
And I naturally reject that sort of thing. It could be my favorite thing in the entire world. Like my mom's carrot cake is my favorite thing in the entire world, but I limited myself to my birthday only once a year, so that I only got it on my birthday once a year. She'd make it for me anytime because she's mom. But if I did that, then it wouldn't be special anymore. I wouldn't even care. So
that's true.
Yeah, it could be my favorite thing in the world, and if I have it too often, it's no longer cool anymore.
Yeah.
So we could say the same thing about like your fancy car and my fancy motorcycle. Turn that thing into a grocery getter to where you're driving it every day, and like, this isn't fancy anymore.
Right.
It just is.
Yeah, everything kind of has its window and its process where you love what it is, but yeah, you learn to appreciate things in bits a little bit more so that you can kind of extend that window of enjoyment for as long as possible, because you never want it to go away, but it can if you overuse or do something too much. Yeah, that definitely happens. In the case of doing something like what you do or what I do, where so while the title of our jobs is the same every day, that doesn't mean I necessarily want to take on the same exact task every single day. While I certainly draw, render, design, paint, whatever, but thankfully all those things sort of fall under the same umbrella, but they're different every day. They bring different challenges, so they kind of help your mind expand a little bit. If I had to just sit down and do pen sketches every day, after about a week, I'd be pretty burnt out and I wouldn't want to do it anymore. Because I wouldn't feel like there's any individuality behind it. Now it's just what I do. It's not the same as something that's done occasionally. It kind of feels more fun and spastic. And I realize in a profession, you can't treat things like that. You have to have some consistency to what you do. But that's why the little bit of variety here and there kind of keeps things a little bit more interesting. But that's why sometimes the longer-term projects are a little bit harder to stay focused on, because you've been in that zone for so long. You're really looking for the escape at that point, something else. I'll have an odd request come along in the middle of a big job, and they're like, I'm not sure if you're really into this. And I'm like, oh my God, this is all I want to do right now. Just draw this thing that I've never drawn before. I don't know anything about these. I've never drawn a hamburger. I don't care. I just really want to draw a hamburger
Right.
because it'll just turn my brain off to the thing that I'm doing, and it's a new challenge. It's something kind of fresh and fun and exciting. So that's where I'm not really a good fit for super long-term jobs. I'd like the little short bursts, kind of keep things fresh all the time.
Yeah, 100%. When my friends are like, oh, I got a buddy who wants to get some work done, and I don't know if I should send it to you because it's not what you normally do. Like, give me the right of refusal every time.
Yeah, let me hear you out.
Yeah, because I've done some random stuff. Unfortunately, I can't really talk too much about some of the strange things, but like doing some prototyping for Mophie cell phone cases. What, you think I would be the guy to call for that? Like, no, but I did it, and it was fun. It was a really cool challenge. And they've called me a few other times to help them navigate a couple of their prototyping, issues that they were doing. Like, oh, every time I see that number come up on my phone, like, oh, cool. I wonder what kind of fun project they got for me this time. So yeah, I always want the weird projects. But so to not get too far off of the whole finding inspiration thing, how terrible is it when you find inspiration and you put something online and somebody's like, did you know that the Ferrari that you painted does not have that tail light? Man, you know what I don't need to hear is the input from the peanut gallery when I just put something out there.
Yeah, I think people think that you're not already aware of your own flaws when you put something out into the world like that. Like, social media is the entire world. Let's just say, you're putting it in front of, doesn't matter how many follower size you have. You're putting it out there. And whether it's ridiculed today or tomorrow. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's really the point. Yeah. So most people are already aware of their flaws when it goes out there. And rather than add an asterisk to your description and say this, you just kind of go on and you're just kind of sort of proud about something. And yeah, there's always somebody that wants to take that little moment from you. And it's interesting, as a creative that puts stuff out on social media, how little it takes from somebody else to kind of dink you for that, moment. You really enjoyed something that you're really, really proud of. And it always takes that little comment like, ooh, the belt line's too high, or they didn't use those marker lights in 66 or something like that. And these all may be really valid criticisms. In my mind, I'm like, I did this whole project in like an hour or two, so I don't want to get into... Yeah. I'm gonna mess up some details. I'm gonna gloss over some things. There's gonna be mistakes related to the amount of time that I took, especially on social media, where half of what I post there is only created for social media. It's not even the real work I'm doing that day. So it's even more is going to get lost because it's just a different attention to detail than what I'm actually doing for people who are paying me. Yeah. But in that way, you're putting yourself out there. You're sharing something that you did that you wouldn't put out there if you didn't like or weren't proud of anyways. And it's nice to get that validation from people, some positive feedback. But it's always impressive that somebody's willing to take the time to type something at all. That's just like a no. Like, no, this is the worst shit you've ever done. I can't believe you even posted this.
Right? Yeah, and like you get it probably more than I do because we've already talked about that. Your jobs are a lot shorter than mine are, and of course I get it too. The book, the book makes me particularly vulnerable because people want to point out, misspelled words and whatnot. It's not so much anymore, but still get them occasionally. But in the case of you, where you drew a Ferrari or a car or whatever you're doing while literally sitting there at a coffee shop or in front of the beach or something, and somebody wants to pick it apart, like, dude, I drew this thing from memory, and you want to tell me that the scale is off? Come on. You're more than welcome to draw this car yourself and show me where my mistakes are. You can email it. Actually, let me give you my fax number.
Fax me right away.
Yeah, show me where that mistake is. But yeah, and I've done on the opposite side of that, I'll spend 100+ hours designing a suspension and finding every single flaw, like design issue, like should I mount the shock this way or should I mount this here, and find the best answer possible for the way that something needs to be achieved. And I'll put it out there and somebody will be like, well, you mounted the shock sideways, that's off axis, it's going to cause an issue. There is actually not enough information in this photo for you to deduce that, because mine is sharp and very detailed. Mine's 100% to scale, but I might only show a 2D view. And so the information's not there to deduce that. It'd be like somebody telling you that the license plate box doesn't look the way that it does on that car. And you're like, man, this is a 3/4 view from the front. You can't see the rear license box on this car or something. Like there's just not enough information to make that. But inevitably somebody's out there because they interpreted it in their brain differently, not realizing this is a full 3D design that you're only seeing 2 dimensions of and can't actually fill it. And to your point of before, is it only takes one voice to overpower 1,000, one negative voice to overpower 1,000 positive voices. As a creative, that one voice is just the only one you hear.
It's crazy how loud it is too. It's almost not enough to weigh out all the positive stuff or what you think about it.
Especially on those days where you're struggling to find inspiration already. And you're like, I did this thing.
Yeah. And you feel like, or at least I feel like, the days are sort of low, but you're like, I want to put something out there, and this is something a little bit different, unusual for me, or, I was trying something. And of course, you hope for the positive feedback, because you could really take that momentum of positive feedback and do something else, even with the day or the next project, but it doesn't really take much to just kind of dink you off of that moment. So, it's sort of a double-edged sword. You should really never put your so much of your heart into what other people think about what you do. Is an easy thing to say. You shouldn't care what other people think. The reality is, most of what we do is for somebody else. So it does matter what people think to some degree anyways.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Well, that's why, we've talked about that. That's why I don't really post a lot of my motorcycle stuff is, one, it's not for somebody else. It's for me only. I don't take them to shows. I don't use them really for marketing. They're 100% for me. And I show a couple of my friends, and very, very little of what I do on my motorcycles ends up online because I literally don't care. I don't want anybody to bring me their motorcycles to work on. It's my getaway is to work on my bikes exactly how I want. And if you think something I did is stupid on my bike, that noise of that person is not even, it's muted to me. I don't care. Like, I think that's stupid as ever. Okay. And carry on with my day because it's not for anybody else. That was for me. But if something that I'm like we're talking about, if we're producing something that's for somebody else, like that suspension design, for example, and you want to, poke fun at this one thing that I actually don't have enough information for, it's like, come on, man. Trying to do a thing here.
And it's really, in that stage, it's really the person who's commissioning or purchasing that thing. This is the only opinion that really, really matters.
Yeah, of course.
But in today's world, it's not like they can't also scroll through and see what other people think, and come back with that same feedback. Like, what do you think about that shock mount? Or do you think we could tighten up those wheel ellipses a little bit to match 18s instead of, I don't know, what you drew on there, 22s? It's just really hard to say. Like, this is also part of why I don't share shop work on social media, because I'm they're not the people that I need feedback from. Like, this is the shop that I'm working with. This is where I need direct feedback. Maybe when we get something finished and it's shareable, it's cool. It's a done idea at that point. But the internet is just such this place where everybody's sharing their opinion and feedback unwarranted all the time. Sometimes we ask. It's usually a mistake. I would advise against it if you can. You should just know better.
Don't crowdsource advice.
Yeah, don't crowdsource advice. It's lessons to live by. You may get one or two people that say the thing that you think, but it won't hurt as much as the person that's like, you're a fucking idiot. Why would you do that? Only a dumb person would do X, Y, and Z. Like, oh, that's what I was gonna do.
Yeah. Well, on that same subject, the Merc is something that gets everybody's opinion on, and that's one of the few things I do not care a one iota if you think it's the ugliest car in the world, if you think it should have had white walls, if you think it could have been painted a different color. I don't care because Jerry loves it.
That's what matters.
In the end, Jerry loves it, and there's nothing wrong with the car in any other way except for someone's opinion about what they would have done differently.
Sure.
And if that person is more than welcome to call me and we can talk about building a project for them.
Yeah.
But if somebody commissions me to do something and I produce exactly what they wanted or better,
Mission
and somebody's got an
accomplished.
opinion if somebody else has got an opinion about that, I don't know, man, you're just saying words. There's energy that could be spent elsewhere.
Yeah, definitely. And also, how's your project going? What are you doing? What's up?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and again, kind of circle around to, well, you're more than welcome to paint your Mercury that
do what you
color
want.
if you'd like to. Yeah, or you can put white walls on your Mercury. But yeah, it's kind of a different thing in the, because of course, as a creative, I made that. But that's like you in the shop. Like, you're not looking for people's input. You're just going like, well, I did this. And it's different than the little sketch that you did, or my book, for example, where it's like these little digs. They're like, ow, they're so painful on certain days.
Yeah. It does hurt when you are, like, wrong in that moment. A typo, like, not like, even in a book, or even if I've captioned something wrong on Instagram, I've said 53 instead of 54 when they did a 1 year only thing, that I might not be a historian on that vehicle. It's a simple error. It's a silly error. It's fixable, just by edit of type. But it turns into these weird little moments sometimes with people like, you didn't know that they only did that in 1954? Like, honestly, I didn't, and I care a lot less now that I know about it. I'm going to delete that out of my brain, and I'm never going to draw one of these again, ever.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the bad thing too, huh? It's because once you find out that there's a niche crowd of rabid followers for whatever this vehicle is, like, I imagine drawing a bug that was kind of descript, because your bugs, when you draw Volkswagen bugs, they're a little nondescript. They just look like bugs. But if you're
general bugness.
Yeah, if you drew one that had some detail, you're going to get a rabid group of people that are like, that taillight doesn't belong in that car.
Yeah, exactly.
You're just not going to ever draw bugs again. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, ask the average person, a Super Beetle sitting next to an early oval window or something, oval window. So, two cars that are distinctly valued differently because, well, an oval is kind of, or a split, versus a Super Beetle. The average person is going to take whichever one's got the color that they like most on it. They don't know any different, because to them, a bug's a bug.
Yeah.
But you get to the enthusiast, and all of a sudden, if you don't know the difference between the two, you're an idiot, because it's super clear to the enthusiast.
You should know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
I
it's
did my
obvious.
2 minutes
Well,
of Google
look at that.
research. I tried. I did my part. Then I
Well,
bothered to
yeah.
look it up at all.
Well, yeah, you'd end up with a car like mine that had my bug that had the early rag, or the oval taillights on my 60. I think mine was a 66, and I had oval taillights on it, and peanut turn indicators, and man, that pissed people off.
It's so wacky because we work in the custom car industry. There should be a greater appreciation for changing of details, and generally there is. And it's not like there's these swaths of people out there that are like, you should have blah, 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 to the point of what we're talking about. It really just takes that one person being like arrogant or irritated to just kind of, like I said, upset kind of the whole moment. Like, I don't know, I thought I kind of drew this cool idea for a Volkswagen bug, and yeah, that's the fact that somebody might tear it apart because of X, Y, and Z is like, all right, I can see it's not for you. But again, the fact that you took so much time to type out this essay, I'm not sure what you've got going on in life, but this is too much.
Oh yeah, exactly. Who hurt you?
Who hurt you?
Yeah,
Somebody
show me
else.
on your stall.
Yeah, somebody else in the Volkswagen crowd pointed all these things out to you. But
Well,
yeah,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say we should generally have a better appreciation for moving details around and stuff like that. So, you know, we don't all have to be historians on the things that we're doing. It's good to have knowledge of course, but I don't know every single little thing about every single little thing, and I like learning all the things, but I don't necessarily want to learn it from someone who's really arrogant on social media.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, on the on that subject, there's a really famous car that Gene Winfield built. I believe it's called Maybelline, and it's listed as a '61 Cadillac, and it's absolutely a '62. And but I just happen to be somebody who has owned multiple '61s and know exactly the differences between the '61s and '62s.
Yeah.
And even as a Cadillac person, I've had Cadillac people be like, "Oh, no, that's a '61," just thinking that everybody had listed it as such. And because I specifically know so much about '61s and '2s, I'm like, "Oh no," and show them online, and they're like, "Oh, well, now my entire life is ruined. Everything I thought I knew is a lie." But but it's like wildly marketed as a '61 Cadillac, even though it is a '62. And I don't blame anybody for that, because unless you're a Cadillac fan, they just call them the twin fins, and you'd have to really know the '61s and '2s to know the difference between them. So you could be like, "Oh yeah, it's '61," because somebody came by and said it once, and then you're like, "Oh yeah, it was in my yard," and it was because I'm sure that's what it was.
61. Yeah.
Yeah, it was in his yard, and he was like, "Oh, those fins are cool," and somebody's like, "Oh yeah, pretty sure it's a '61," and here we are. Now it's just widely known as the 61 that is actually a 62. Well, and to make it even worse, it's got a 59 roof on it. So there's that.
That doesn't help. Yeah. I think we both can appreciate where either from each other or from other people who really, really know these really, really cool details. What it comes down to is how you share that knowledge with people. If you're just an ass, then I don't care how much you know about what I don't know. I'm not going to talk with you. We're not going to be friends. We're not going to have a good time. We're not even going to have a conversation. So, because I love hearing about all the stuff that I don't know, the details, the silly little stuff. It's how you choose your words.
Oh yeah. Well, when we were doing the college stuff with Angelina, her department head hit me up asking me if I wanted to teach their suspension course. And, I declined, but he said, I can't find anybody who's knowledgeable who's not an asshole. It's just like the older gentlemen that know really about suspension just end up being cantankerous. And fair enough, I guess. It's not like life is kind. Probably, and it's not like the automotive industry is the sweetest place to hang out either. But
No, not really.
yeah, you can get knocked down pretty quick if you don't put your foot down and be a prick. But yeah, I thought it was interesting. Like, they've got a really wonderful group over there, but they just can't find somebody who's not a prick. But that's one of the things when I talk about like why it's my position to write the book, is because I can also do it in a way that hopefully doesn't come across like I'm a prick. I might be confident and might be a little braggadocious at times, but hopefully it's not shitty.
That's all that matters, As you say, how you say the stuff. And that's so much of what actually gets lost in social media. All we're doing is reading typed word. The same thing can happen in a text or email or anything. We're just interpreting emotions. And it's a lot of times, especially with a negative comment, let's say on social media, or that email, you're like, oh, I gave them an update. I'm not sure if they're going to be happy. And that email, you're reading in this kind of made-up personified version of what they're saying, because you have no idea. But when you're doing a face-to-face thing, there's so much, or even on the phone, you understand just because the nature of voice inflection, there's so much more there to pull from. You can feel that someone's not trying to hurt you. They're just saying, hey, wrong taillights, buddy. It can be said in so many different ways, but it's interesting that in the typed word version, you just kind of go, it read angrily, because sometimes in like an art flaw, it's something, if there's something wrong or off in a piece, I am 100% aware of it already. It's not going to stop me from pointing it out there, because it's kind of, I think there's something very human about having flaws in artwork. Unless it's really, 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 like square wheels, that's bad. You don't want to, I'm not going to post something with square wheels. That's really bad. But it's important to be human.
Yeah, well, that can be a topic in itself, is like how some things should be freestyled a little bit. And that's where, we could discuss like why billet parts typically look like billet parts, but a really, really nicely well done freestyled billet part now looks like this elegant piece rather than a machine made it, because it's kind of difficult. It takes a lot of effort to make a machine flow that's not just following sharp curves. I mean, ship's curves, and French curves and stuff like that really help keep the line straight while you're being flowy. Or, I've seen you, when you're doing digital, you'll draw a line and then you'll delete it and you'll draw a line. And you'll do that 10 times until you get the line to land where you want it to. But the point is for it to be like loose and organic without being too sterile.
Yeah.
We could have an entire conversation about there's supposed to be some flaws, because if you just draw it all with rulers and straight lines and perfect circles and stuff and make it way too sterile, it just falls apart and it actually looks terrible. So the flaws are important. It looks great in a photo. Take the photo, but the artistic photos end up being the one that's got some forced perspective or whatever to it.
Yeah, and I think the flaws generally give, there's sort of a signature to flaws. Flaws not only let people know who you are, maybe there's a way that you do flaws that's different than somebody else that, once repeated a million times is not necessarily a flaw. I mean, in the case of suspension design, if it's a flaw, it's sort of dangerous, but...
Yeah.
Yeah. A little bit of a different thing.
Yeah. Well, like I said, this could be its own subject, because that would then, we could get into heuristics and how it's not technically correct, but it does what we need it to for this application, because the technical way would be expensive or very, very time consuming to achieve this. So we do this to skirt around that. And I'm sure you could probably say the same thing about what you do is these flaws that you're talking about are maybe a quick way to achieve this end goal that's good 95% of the time.
Maybe somebody's budget isn't fully there and you want to accomplish a goal for them because you believe in the same thing. And you kind of go, all right, I can't put 100 hours into this, but I can still do something for you.
Yeah, you get you there. And so it's super easy to call that a flaw, but it ends up being eventually ends up being a style guide, and you get known for that, or like, that works. Yeah. So I would say that could be its own subject, but
that is true.
I think we've beat up finding inspiration pretty well.
We beat the hell out of it.
Yeah.
So inspired right now. It's crazy.
Yeah. So hopefully we can start doing some more of these, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. Let us know if you've got some subjects you'd like us to talk about, and we'll try and hit some more of these in time. Thanks for joining us, though.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. We always have lots of great ideas for chat, so feedback is always welcome.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys have a great rest of your day.